All right, welcome back to another episode of Sean and Ed's Do Baseball.
I'm Sean.
And I'm Ed's.
And we're here with baseball history.
That's right, we're bringing you bi-weekly baseball history on our bi-weekly baseball history podcast, where the story catcher doesn't know what the story pitcher is out towing the rubber, throwing them.
And my pitch today is about a pitcher.
Is it?
I'm pitching a pitcher today.
All right, well, I'm interested to hear that. We're a couple weeks into spring training by now.
Oh, yeah. It's been wonderful.
Baseball's just around the corner. You've been enjoying it. You have been enjoying some warm, dry weather,
yeah,
I assume.
Yeah, by the time I'm listening to this, I'll be on my way home from Arizona and checking out some spring training stuff. But besides that, and saying hello to my future self, where can people find us, Edsy?
Well, you can find us on Twitter, x.com machine, at Doing Baseball, and on Instagram and TikTok at Doing.Baseball. And I am also on Twitter, x.com machine, at Eds Do Baseball.
And I'm at Sean Do Baseball. And wherever you're listening, however you're listening, thank you very much. And if you could give us a review, give us a rating, it helps the podcast. Give us a follow. All those things, they really help.
Yeah, and let me also echo thanking you for listening.
Of course. Mm-hmm. And thanks to our sponsor as well, Two Loons Brewing. You can check them out at twoloonsbrewing.com. Follow them on Instagram, all of that stuff. They have a couple great beers out already. Some great beers at bars around the GTA in Toronto. And hopefully we'll be seeing the brick and mortar soon and doing one of these from the brewery itself.
Mm-hmm. And if your local establishment doesn't have a Two Loons IPA or lager in stock, please ask for it.
Of course.
And then maybe you'll start to see them popping up around every establishment around the city, your city. And of course, be of legal drinking age, and please enjoy responsibly.
And today we are not talking about enjoying responsibly.
Okay.
Is that a good transition?
I guess it's a segue.
It's a segue. Well, Edsy, I gave you a little hint for this.
You gave me some homework. Well, indirectly, you gave me some homework to do.
Yeah. So I mentioned the movie Mississippi Burning to you, mm-hmm. And I knew you'd watch it. I knew you'd enjoy it. Good movie. We talked about it for a long time before this episode.
Mm-hmm.
But
it is a great film.
Yeah, you would never know how it kind of ties into our story today.
I watched it trying to guess, and if you haven't seen Mississippi Burning, there are several references to baseball games in it, and there's a scene where he goes into the barber shop and they're listening to the Cardinals game. I think the Cardinals are winning 5-0 in the bottom of the 7th inning. I wondered if maybe that was a game that you were gonna go over, but
heck no.
No, okay.
All right.
So none of the references to games in the movie are relevant to your story today.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
I sent you on a fool's errand.
Okay, that's what I wondered. I was like, I feel like this hint may be a little bit of deception, because that would be pretty, that'd be a pretty obscure pull for you to describe a game that
was on the radio in a movie.
Yeah.
That would work. But it's February. It's the end of February. We've been doing Black History Month stories. So this one is very much, if you've seen the movie, you know that in 1964, there was the Freedom Summer Project, which was launched, and it was a volunteer campaign to attempt to register as many African-American voters as possible in the South and Mississippi.
Mm-hmm. What was it called again? The Freedom
Summer Project.
Summer Project, okay.
So in Mississippi, under Jim Crow, blacks had been restricted from voting since the turn of the century due to barriers for voter registration and other, basically intimidation tactics. Technically, they were allowed, but there were so many barriers for them that very few were able to actually vote. But with the civil rights movement in full swing in the summer of 1964, volunteers from across the nation descended on Mississippi and other southern states and attempted, despite knowing that it could be dangerous, to make sure African Americans in Mississippi could vote in upcoming elections, a lot of them for the first time ever.
Okay, I get that. I watched the movie.
Yeah.
And I was aware that they were the subjects, let's say that.
Well, we'll talk about the subjects a little bit here.
Well, I'm just gonna say that, like, I knew they were like activists there, but I was unaware that, like, that's what they were in fact down there doing, was like sort of escorting people to voting. Or
and registering them.
Okay.
Right. They were saying, hey, we're gonna meet you where you are and get you to register to vote in a safe space. And you're going to hear a little bit what happened here. So Andrew Goodman and Michael Schwerner were both from New York, and they were two of these volunteers who went down to Mississippi. There, they worked with James Chaney, who was a 20-year-old black civil rights activist from Mississippi who had participated in the Freedom Ride at just 18, 2 years prior. And Chaney had organized voter education classes and introduced Congress of Racial Equality Workers to local church leaders and helped the Congress of Racial Equality Workers get around the county. So he was there. He was from the community. He was
Chaney. This is Chaney.
Yeah. So he welcomes these guys. He's showing them around. They're going to black churches, black swimming pools, like all these segregated places. And these white guys are like, hey, here's how you vote.
Okay, these are three white gentlemen.
No, Chaney's black.
Okay.
Goodman and Schwerner are white.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that because...
Yeah. So Chaney...
If you've seen the movie.
...was from nearby Meridian, Mississippi. And he took Goodman and Schwerner around to meet with local black leaders and see some friends. One of the prominent black families in Meridian was the Boyd family. The Boyds were a baseball family with many members playing in the Negro Leagues, including K.T. Boyd and his brother Bob. In fact, in 1950, Bob Boyd was the first black man to sign with the Chicago White Sox and among the first black men to sign with any major league organization. On top of that, their great-great-uncle, Benjamin Boyd, had played for the Memphis Red Sox and the Homestead Grays.
Okay.
So the Boyd family has a lot of history.
Yeah.
Frank Boyd was friends with James Chaney. He brought the volunteers back to his brother Willie's house, otherwise known as Skeeter.
So Willie is
okay.
Chaney's brother?
No. Frank Boyd.
Yes.
Is friends with James Chaney.
Yes.
And he brings Chaney and the volunteers to his brother Willie's house.
I got you. Okay.
Otherwise known as Skeeter. Skeeter was a ball player himself in his day. He played for the Meridian White Sox and a bunch of minor league, essentially Negro leagues. Mm-hmm. And apparently at 17, he had like some ridiculous like 17-0 record or something like that.
Skeeter Boyd was 17-0.
Yeah, as a pitcher.
Okay.
So where is my spot here? So he brings him back to Skeeter's house, and basically Skeeter and his wife, Gertha Ray, otherwise known as Sweetie, had a handful of children themselves. One would grow up to be a big leaguer.
Oil can.
Fuck you. How'd you get it so quick?
I just had a feeling, man.
Dennis Boyd was just 5 years old when the Freedom Summer volunteers showed up at his family home. He recalled fondly his experience meeting the men and even sitting on their laps. He recalled it being his first memory of white men in his house and how kind they were to him. Even at a young age, he noticed a vast difference between the way they interacted with him and his family versus the white population of his hometown of Meridian, Mississippi.
Okay.
On Memorial Day...
As you probably would at that time.
Yeah.
Based on what I saw in Mississippi Burning.
Yeah, it's a highly segregated community. Mm-hmm. So it's like, even for these white guys to be in a black family's home is out of the norm completely.
Yeah, just from what I understand, it was that was grounds for either of those parties to get their asses kicked.
Yes.
Yeah.
So on Memorial Day...
Not that it was justified. Just let me point that out.
No, you're just saying what it was.
Yeah.
On Memorial Day, May 25th, 1964, Schwerner and Chaney spoke at a congregation at Mount Zion Methodist Church in Longdale, Mississippi, just outside of Meridian. Mm-hmm. The KKK found out and hatched a plan to lure the core workers back. So they attacked the congregation and burned the church. So I don't know how much of a plan it was, but they were just like, no, this ain't happening. So as you see in the movie, they attack the congregants, they burned down the church. Swerner and Cheney, along with Goodman, would return to apologize to the congregation who had been brutalized and lost their church because it may have been used for, voter registration.
Yeah.
Which is fucked.
Yeah.
After speaking with the congregation, the three set up to Memphis, but after they drove away, the three civil rights workers, James Cheney, Andrew Goodman, and Michael Schwerner, would be arrested and then murdered in a collaborative effort between the local police and the KKK.
Yes. That's the movie.
Yeah. And imagine a 5-year-old Dennis Boyd.
Just taking all that in.
And he met them.
Yeah.
In his book, he talks about his brother, or his uncle, I guess, Frank, his dad, Skeeter's brother, wanting to go with them. And I don't know how close Frank was to getting in the car with these guys, but
it's like he could have been killed too, is what you're saying. He could have been 4.
It could have been 4.
Yeah. Wow.
And they were at the Boyd house.
Right. Oh, fuck.
Right before.
Holy
apparently. Shit. I couldn't find exactly whether they were there, right? But in the book I read, it basically was like, and then they left and they were killed. And it was
holy shit.
fuck.
That's crazy, man.
So.
That's not really mentioned in the movie.
No, it's not. No. So Dennis Ray Boyd was born October 6th, 1959 in Meridian, Mississippi. Dennis had 5 older brothers and 2 older sisters, as well as a younger sister who died tragically at a young age after getting run over by the family car.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, it's rough.
The family car? That'd be the worst car to get run over by.
Yeah, it was the dad driving. Oh. Yeah. It unfortunately happens.
It does unfortunately happen.
Now, we're not going to hang up on that too much. I was even not sure to include it, but we had to.
Move beyond that.
All right. So Dennis grew up playing ball and trying to keep up with his older brothers. He said there was no t-ball or coach pitch at the time, and he had to learn to keep up with the older kids if he wanted to play. At 13, he was named MVP of the Meridian Little League All-Star Game.
All right. So talent right out of the gate for Dennis.
Yep. So even with the family background and connections, it was still not easy for a black ball player to come out of Mississippi. Now that segregation was over, it brought new obstacles, but the Boyd brothers at least had Bill Marchant. A white man coaching an integrated team in Mississippi at the time was not an easy feat, and he showed kindness by even buying cleats for the Boyd boys. And you'll see he's still not great.
Still not great, but...
but he at least... I'll let Dennis explain.
Okay.
Dennis would later write, he could have been killed. That's how serious it was. Not harmed, not threatened, but literally killed for putting my brothers on the team. That's how strong the hatred was. And it was definitely applied to a white man who showed any kind of encouragement or love for a black kid. Bill Marchant was tough as nails for standing there for my family, and I'll always appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you needed somebody to be step out of the norm to really, because once the school's integrated, right? It's like fucking Remember the Titans, right? Like, it all of a sudden meant that, if you have a racist white coach, how many black players are going to be on the baseball team?
Yeah, well, in theory, not very many.
Exactly. Yeah. So this guy, took a risk and essentially was nice, but he's still not nice. Even still, Marchant was not exactly fair to the Boyd brothers at first. And in Dennis' autobiography, he tells a story of his brother Mike refusing to pitch on short rest and his brother Don standing up for him. Coach Marchant suspended both of them from the team and made them walk home instead of riding the team bus.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah. Dennis claims his mother saw, they were in the stands and the coach didn't know that the family was there. So the family sees the coach, scream at these kids and be like, you're fucking walking home. So.
Get your bags, you're walking yourself.
So Boyd doesn't really say it, but he's like, anyways, my mom went and talked with the coach and let's just say she always had a gun in her car. It was like, he's like, either way, Mike and Don were back on the team.
Right.
And I'm like,
he's like, listen,
yeah,
I have a bar rifle under my passenger seat. It's a bench seat. It's a big car.
It's the 60s.
Yeah.
So, in 1973,
So mom threatens the coach.
they get
Kids are
back
back on the team. Okay.
Yeah, and it's great because they get drafted by big league organizations in 1973. Don
That
Boyd's
worked out.
drafted by the Cardinals, but he'd just play one season in rookie ball. But Mike, who was the best, and he was drafted by the Dodgers, but he was never offered a contract from the Dodgers because at 18, Mike Boyd got a white girl pregnant.
Okay. And
Nowadays, exactly 50 years later, but at the time, the Dodgers were like, "Fuck this guy."
okay. That's
you
fucked
were
up.
allowed to be black, but you weren't allowed to
Yeah.
to.
Don't mix
mix.
with us. Okay,
Yeah,
I got you.
So once again, this is the time that we're in right now, in 1973, and Dennis would say that it was pretty clear why Mike never made it. It was because of this, and Mike is said to be like the best of the Boyd brothers, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So when Dennis joined Coach Marchand, the Meridian team went to the state playoffs, and Dennis Boyd would end up with a scholarship to Jackson State University. But what he endured to get there was fucking like horrendous, and probably something experienced by hundreds, if not thousands, of black ball players across the South at the time. So, fucking strap in.
Okay,
1976, he's grade 11. The Meridian team plays Pascagoula, Mississippi. If I said it wrong, fuck you, Pascagoula. You're paying for your father's sins. Boyd pitched that night and threw a complete game, defeating Pascagoula 12-1. Eds, when I read Boyd's account of the game, it was so hard to read. He was the only black player in the game, and as he made his way on the field from the clubhouse, he was pelted with pebbles, and his white teammates had to walk around him, giving him cover and telling him to ignore the slurs and yelling coming from the people to a 16-year-old.
Yeah. That sucks. That's fucked
So
up.
once on the bump, he settled in. He's setting down the hitters one by one. He's being chirped viciously, and once he allows a double in the third or fourth inning, the runner on second begins just screaming the N-word at him as he pitches.
Okay.
And the field ump is white, the home plate ump is black, and the field ump is doing nothing. And the crowd picks up on this.
Yeah.
So you have like a stadium of people in a dugout just screaming the N-word at you as you're winding up to pitch.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
This is like distracting and threatening.
yeah, and to make
in turn
things,
is very
I don't
distracting.
know. This is one of those things that is like, oh, you thought you were trying to help. So the Boyd's shortstop tried to stop the racist chirping, but he was like, you can't say that. He's our
No.
exactly. So racist chants grew louder and grew louder.
Oh man.
And
This is a way to tell on yourself, bud.
Boyd begins to just cry. Like he is pitching, but he's crying.
I can imagine. That would create a very emotional reaction among most people.
Yeah. And he's not quite reacting because he's got to pitch. It's the playoffs or what? It's a big game. And he just keeps sitting down batters. And on top of the chanting, the crowd begins to throw garbage at him as he walks to and from the dugout, including watermelon rinds and banana peels. And
Motherfuckers.
one hits him in the face. Finally, the ump behind the plate, who is a large black man who Boyd described as Shaquille O'Neal big, he finally steps in. Boyd would write, the black umpire behind the plate finally called time and said, I'm going to put a stop to this shit. The umpire went over the dugout, told the team, if I hear that word one more goddamn time, I'm going to clear the whole fucking dugout. As a matter of fact, you better come up here swinging because everything he throws is a strike. So he's got an ally now with the that's how bad things had to get that the umpire and you had to think it took some balls even for a man that size
It's interesting they
to do
didn't
that.
like force like the reprimand wasn't going to be forfeit, but that may have caused a riot.
Yeah.
So,
But Boyd finishes the game with 15 Ks, and his teammates once again have to surround him for protection as they go to the team bus, and people are throwing shit at him.
yeah.
And yelling shit.
I got to Bartman him out of there.
And this is what a 16 or 17-year-old experienced. So just
That's
kind
fucking
of, this is the
insanity.
context we have going forward in Boyd's experiences. Like, oh, the first white people that were nice to me got murdered. And, this is my baseball experience.
Fuck.
Yeah. So he finishes high school. He goes to Jackson State University. He's now a member of the school's Hall of Fame. And in 1980, at age 21, Dennis Oil Can Boyd was drafted in the 16th round by the Boston Red Sox.
Okay.
So
is he known as Oil Can yet?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Why is his name Oil Can?
Well, we're getting to that right now. I was really hoping you wouldn't guess this until this moment in the podcast.
Well, I mean, once you started saying Boyd's and I was lining up the timeline, I was like, I think that's Oil Can Boyd.
Yeah, we're
Anyway.
talking Oil Can.
Yeah.
So how did he get the name Oil Can Boyd? From a young age, Dennis was smoking weed and drinking alcohol, and this is how he would earn his famous moniker, Oil Can Boyd. There's a few different rumors, and you can find a few different ways of, why. Sports Illustrated and I think the New York Times both wrote vaguely similar tales. But Boyd would clear up why his name was Oil Can Boyd in an interview with the Bleacher Report's Saul Wisnia in September 2012. And I quote, "Everybody says it's because I drank a lot of beer and they called beer oil down in Mississippi. But that's not true. It was gut rot whiskey."
It wasn't beer. It was much stronger than beer. I'm not a pussy.
Everybody in Meridian, where I grew up, drank it. You got it from a lady up the street named Big Mama. Which absolutely is amazing. He continued, "When I was 7, yes, at 7, I started drinking some myself. One day somebody caught us in a tin shed drinking Big Mama's whiskey out of oil cans. So my friend Pap started calling me Oil Can. I wrote it under the bill of my baseball cap, and my high school teammates started calling me that too. It just stuck."
Hey, I like it.
So he came from a 7-year-old drinking whiskey out of oil cans.
Yeah.
Just so we're clear.
I like it. I like a good historical nickname that goes back to your roots.
No. It's like, your dad was a mechanic? No.
No. Well, he changed his own oil and he was an alcoholic and I used to steal his liquor. But
The liquor, I didn't go into the detail. The liquor was for his mother, actually.
Oh, okay.
She had her own issues. So Oil Can would rocket through the minor leagues with the organization. And he was not a big guy. And he's friggin' like Chris Sale-esque. He's 6 feet, 155 pounds. So he's skinny. He's a coat hanger with legs. He played with the Elmira Pioneers in 1980 and goes 7-1 with a 2.48 ERA, fourth best in the New York Penn League. So good start.
okay.
In 1981, Oil Can went 14-8 with a 3.67 ERA, tying for third in the Florida State League ERA title. And that winter, Boyd would travel to play winter ball in Columbia. And guess what Oil Can Boyd found in Columbia in 1982?
Inner peace. And cocaine.
A lot of
Yeah.
cocaine.
And this was the 80s?
Yes, 1982.
Oh my God. So this is like the best time for cocaine.
I read a lot of Oil Can Boyd's biography, which I'll talk about at the end. There is a 16-page chapter in it just called Cocaine.
Oh, I'm
That is-
going to have to read just that chapter first.
Well, he talks about it a little bit, and you'd be surprised. He doesn't really, it's not like he goes down there and becomes a fucking cokehead completely, but it's just his introduction. And actually, he gets.
I feel based on it being the 80s, I feel like the bar is a lot lower.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. Like to be a cokehead, it's a lot higher or lower. I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying. You know what I mean?
Trust me, we're gonna get into some cocaine in a little
Okay.
bit. I'm just letting you know. Well, not us.
Not us.
Not
Thank
us.
goodness.
But yeah, Yeah,
goodness.
but he finds cocaine. He's like, oh, that's fun. But also he gets in trouble. And I'll quote from his book. After having a good year playing in the Florida State League in 1981, I went on over to Colombia, South America to play winter ball until January 1982. I got into some trouble down there when I was caught smoking pot on the beach by a policeman who looked like he was 15. It was, to say the least, an interesting time.
To say that is saying the least.
It's very much saying the least. So I should note that Oil Can Boyd is to this day, as far as I know, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he's very, back in 2012 at least, he was very much a enthusiastic cannabis user. And, well, at least in his past, he talked very highly of it. So I'll quote again from the Bleacher Report 2012 interview. I smoke dope every day. I started when I was 12 and never hit it. I was such a thinker. My mind was never idle. But when I smoked, I got locked in. I was so focused. I couldn't hear anything else on the field. I became creative, like an artist doing a painting. A little blue here, a little red there, a curveball here, a slider there. I got to the point where Bill Buckner would come over and say, "Are you high?" If I wasn't, he'd say, "Go get him some." So,
Hey, I mean, if it worked for him.
yeah, he's unabashed. He's you'll hear he talks to his coaches all about. He's like, I'm smoking weed, like then I'm pitching.
Yeah.
And they don't seem.
You know
to really
how I
care.
was doing good? It's because of that.
Yeah. So Oil Can, maybe forcefully, was returned to the U.S. and put up an identical 14-8 record in 1982. This time in Double-A. He lowered his ERA to 2.81 over 205 innings pitched.
And he was like, "Please send me back to Colombia. Please send me back to Colombia this winter."
Yeah, so like the concoction of weed, booze, and cocaine is working for Oil
Doing
Can.
its job. Okay.
Yeah. So this September he gets called up to the Red Sox, who were trying to catch the Brewers for first place in the AL East. Oil Can made his major league debut at Fenway Park against the Cleveland Indians on September 13th, 1982. He worked 5 1/3 innings, giving up just 2 runs, but the Red Sox offense scored only 1, and Oil Can got the loss as the Sox fell 3-1.
Okay.
So it was good
The
first
Red
outing.
Sox were like just okay at this time.
Well, they were fighting for first place. They didn't get it.
Okay.
Against
Okay. Yeah, well,
Milwaukee.
I'm just trying to think of the era. Like, they made the World Series in '86.
Oh,
right?
we'll get there.
Okay. Fuck. Holy.
Yeah,
fuck.
yeah. Just
I'm
hold your
jumping ahead,
horses.
sorry.
Yeah, I'm like we're in 1982. So Boyd would get just 2 more games that fall, and he'd split the 1983 season between AAA Pawtucket and Boston. He pitched well for the AAA team and was called up in June and got his first big league win versus the Twins on June 3rd. He would go back down, but come back for the remainder of the season in August, and he finished the year with a 4-8 record, but a nice 3.28 ERA over 98 2/3 innings pitched for the Red Sox.
That's not too bad.
So he's beginning to get hyped now too, because
Okay.
everyone's like, all right, this kid's, wins and losses still probably matter at this time, but they're like, all right, this kid's coming up and he's shot through the minor league system, so he's becoming a big name in the Red Sox system, who also have a guy named Reggie Clemens. Roger Clemens.
And his brother Roger.
Reggie's brother Roger is coming up.
See, they say Reggie was the better of the two, but he blew his arm out.
Of course.
Roger took his place.
Yeah.
You seen Super Troopers? Where they get Farva?
Yes. Okay, so once he became a Red Sox, the cocaine began to flow a little bit more. He was a stud young pitcher, and everyone in Boston wanted to party with the Oil Can. Who
Okay.
wouldn't?
Right.
And everyone's idea of partying at that time was fucking cocaine.
Yeah.
So, as we know, he's a drinker. He goes out to bars. People are like, hey, let's have a drink. Hey, let's do a bump. And he's just like, all right, this is a nice life. I'm enjoying this right now. In 1984, Boyd would get off to a rough start with the Red Sox, and his temper would make headlines for the first time. After throwing a complete game losing effort on April 6th, Boyd got roughed up in his next 2 starts against Texas and California. Then Boyd got into an argument with skipper Ralph Hulk, and he was sent back to Pawtucket for a month. Boyd says in his book that Hawk said something that he took to be racist, and called Houck out on it, and then was sent down after his next start. So,
Okay. How traditionally was like, button heads with guys like
Yeah.
and anybody who was like kind of odd.
Yeah.
I could see like Jim Bouton famously butted heads
Yeah.
with Houck all the time, even though they were friends.
Yeah.
So I can imagine that like another odd duck like Oil Can
Yeah.
would rub Houck the wrong way.
Yeah, and especially Oil Can. In Oil Can's book, he doesn't use like, I took it as racist. I don't think he might have not been trying to be racist, but I took it that way and I fucking told him.
He could have been.
Yeah, exactly. So Boyd performed well over his month in AAA and was brought back to the big leagues. Boyd posted a 12-12 record with a 4.37 ERA in just under 200 innings pitched for a Red Sox team that finished 86-76. So they're kind of good.
That's pretty good. They're getting there.
Yeah. But Houck would be gone, and the Red Sox would get a new manager in 1985, John McNamara. Boyd would have his two best years for Boston in 85 and 86, but he would also make the papers for more than just his pitching.
Okay.
Boyd soon gained a reputation for what the old guard would refer to as antics on the mound.
Those antics.
Yeah, antics. But Boyd...
We've had antics come up before.
Of course.
It's always very nondescript, but it's never what the owners want.
Exactly.
Okay. Anyway,
and the
on.
writers and whoever is like, well, it wasn't like that when I was a kid. But Oil Can would, brush off his detractors as mad because he was black and because he had a contentious personality. He would say to Sports Illustrated, nobody called Bird Fidrich a hot dog, and he did the same stuff. I got color. I got character. I am the can.
Is that how he said it? Oh man, is that like in
Sports Illustrated?
Oh man,
believe it.
I wish I could see that in person being said.
Oh, I love it. So
I am the can.
So he's like, fuck you, I'm just black, and I got fucking you. Mark Fidrich was or Bird Fidrich was not a bird was not.
The bird is not
He was
the
a
word.
white-
The man's the can. The can's the man.
Bird Fidrich was white. He's black. He's like, fuck you. That's what he said.
Yeah,
so
I
in
get it.
85, I know you know. I'm telling everybody else. So in
okay.
1985, the Red Sox went 81-81, which is a little underwhelming. They weren't getting there as much as you thought. But Oil Can would lead the team with 271 and a third innings pitched and a 3.7 ERA, good enough for a 116 ERA plus. It was an impressive season, but off the field, Boyd's cocaine use was increasing. Before the 19...
As it usually does.
Yes, it does. Oh, and it takes a jump here because before the 1985 season, Boyd had graduated from powdered cocaine to crack cocaine.
Oh no.
Or freebasing cocaine. Just any way you could get cocaine. He was into it.
Yeah. Okay.
He's smoking it.
He did not discriminate.
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah, so he's freebasing, doing lines, and eventually, it's just like, I'm going to go all the way. So Boyd got married on December 31st.
To cocaine.
He got married.
Yeah.
To the plant. So he gets married on December 31st, 1985, and claims in his book that he almost missed his wedding because he was so high and a friend had to help him put his tuxedo on.
Slow down, Dennis.
How do you not... Imagine trying to dress a super...
Like, fuck it, let's just go now. I'll do it
good.
naked. I'll do it naked.
I don't need it. I got my cummerbund. I'm good. That's all I need.
I'll just hold my hands like this.
No one can see it. Can you see my balls? By the time spring training started, Oil Can was not looking good. Eventually, Marty Barrett's wife...
Why?
Because of the cocaine.
Yeah, I got you.
He claims he was down to like 125 pounds. Like a
Holy fuck.
like he was a skeleton. So...
Like this microphone stand.
Yeah, and so Marty Barrett, I believe he was the shortstop. I don't know, somebody that was alive back then can tell me. But Marty Barrett's wife is like, "Holy shit, you look awful," and he's like, "Oh, maybe I do." So he's embarrassed by it, and he gets called in to see the team doctor, who was also part owner. It's a whole thing.
That seems like conflict of interest.
Well, kind of.
The owner is the doctor?
Maybe I should have addressed that. I didn't even include his name in here, but it's in the book. So he's got a hilarious back and forth where he's like, hey, you don't look good. Are you using drugs? And he's like, I smoke weed every day. And he's like, cool. Anything else? Yeah. He's just like, cocaine. And he's like, how often? He's like every day. How often every day?
It's like, all day, like 1,500 times a day.
Yeah. So the teams and Boyd said that he went on the IL for hepatitis, and this is during spring training. But really, it was like, holy shit, you are dying from drug abuse. And he takes...
They couldn't have just said, like, something besides hepatitis? Like, what the fuck?
His eyes were, like, yellowing, and it was, like, noticed by the press, so the doctor was like, I gotta play
he's got really high blood pressure, which he would have.
Either way, they gave him hepatitis and sent him, but he only takes like 2 weeks off, and they're just like, no cocaine, just eat food.
just take this syringe. It's got a little bit of hepatitis in it.
They didn't give him actual hepatitis. Okay. They were just like, you got hepatitis.
Diagnosed.
He's going away for a couple of weeks. We don't want to say it's because of cocaine, so we're gonna say it's hepatitis. Anyways, weird.
Anyway, okay, never mind. Carry on. It's not important.
So he gets counseling and he puts on weight in time to start the 1986 season, which, as you mentioned, the Mets are going to end up in the Mets. the Red Sox.
The Mets are too.
Yes, the Mets are too. The Red Sox are going to end up in the World Series. The team had a trainer live with him, and although he was very much addicted, he seemed to have a handle on things, as much
so they like Johnny Cashed him.
Yeah.
They sent him to live with the Carter family, and yeah, he's good to go.
Yeah, he's like, occasionally I'd just escape and go on a 12-hour cocaine binge. But, the rest of the time things were good. So, so many of our listeners know it was a hell of a year for the Red Sox in 86, and probably the most memorable of Boyd's career, too, in just so many fucking ways. So, he's still going on coke binges, he's pitching like an ace alongside Roger Clemens, and he's living a double life, but he was giving the team the results. So the team's like, yeah, he's didn't really stop doing the cocaine as much as
I don't know what's going on over there.
But he's great.
On the other side of the street, but over here,
he's pitching well.
Yawkey Avenue.
Yeah. Boyd, despite this, and giving the Red Sox now a full year and a half of stellar results, was not selected for the All-Star game.
Okay.
Boyd took this as a personal slight, and possibly a racist one.
Uh-huh.
When he was told he wasn't selected for the team, he responded to the reporters saying, "Motherfucker didn't do what?"
Wow.
Yeah. Then he got dressed and went home, telling the Red Sox he quit.
Oh. Over the All-Star game.
Not being selected. By the
fans.
No, by the coach. Like, he was
okay.
He wasn't a starter. He wasn't going to be a starter. But he also claimed that, there's a lot of claims. His book is great, but honestly, sometimes it rambles. So,
okay.
Because he did a lot of cocaine.
While writing the book?
No, not necessarily.
Maybe, though.
Maybe. Anyways, he claims that, they didn't want black men starting in the All-Star game. And the fact that he was, like, second in the AL in wins, and he doesn't get selected by the manager, he was like, this fucking motherfucker's racist. So... Yeah. Then he gets dressed. He goes home. He tells them
it sounds like it was, but he also sounds like he was crazy.
Well, he's doing a lot of cocaine. Yeah. I mean, like, we'll kind of summarize this at the end. This is the roller coaster we're on right now. There's a lot of empathy for him early, and it's kind of going away a little bit. So he quits the team. The team has Don Baylor come and talk to him. And Oil Can calls Don Baylor an Uncle Tom bastard. Said the team only sent him because he was black.
Yeah. Okay.
So Baylor responded by criticizing Boyd in the press, saying nobody's bigger than the team, which also, you're on a baseball team in the middle of a season where you're, like, fighting for a division, and your second best pitcher is just like, I quit because I wasn't selected. Like, everybody would be
Charlie Sweeney's it.
Yeah, fuck that guy.
Yeah.
Right? So Boyd claimed he came back apparently he came back after quitting, but the security was like, "No, you're not allowed in, Oil Can." You just stormed out.
He Costanza'd it and was like, you took that seriously.
Exactly.
Okay.
But
But security says you can't come in.
and that the day he apparently stormed out in a huff, he's like, "Oh, I came back later that day, but they told me I wasn't allowed back." And then he sat at home for like a week.
Oh, okay.
And Don Baylor came over and he was like, "You Uncle Tom fucking." Anyways,
you bastard, you Uncle Tom bastard. You said.
Yes, that was the exact quote. The next, Okay, so on July 11th, he failed to report and was suspended for 3 days. The next day, the Boston Herald front page showed an angry Oil Can throwing a soft drink at a photographer. After a few days, Oil Can returned to the club, but was suspended for a total of 21 games for his actions.
Fuck.
So he's basically suspended most of July.
Mm-hmm.
During the All-Star break, Boyd went to buy some Coke and noticed the cops tailing him. He left without buying anything because of this. It's crazy. His book's great for these kind of stories. Like, he goes in and he's like, "Oh, there's guys following me, aren't they?" And then he goes out to his car and like there's a guy sitting in his car and he's just like, "I'm just here. Like, they're gonna think we're doing a deal. I'm not giving you anything, but like, you know." Mm-hmm. Anyways, so the cops are tailing him. He gets home. The cops pull up. Bust out the sirens. They get aggressive with him, and he doesn't have anything on him because he didn't buy anything. And Boyd basically is like, the police are illegally arresting him because they're like, "Oh, you have drugs on you, get that down." And he's like, "I don't have anything on me. What are you doing?" He lives in a nice neighborhood, so the private security is like coming up, being like, "What's going on? What's going on?" And they're like, "Oh, he has drugs." And he's like, "I don't have drugs." And they search him, they don't have anything, and they're being aggressive. But they took him down and were like trying to arrest him. His neighbor's a lawyer and is yelling at the police, like, "I saw like they were, they came at you with no probable cause." It's a whole kerfuffle, and basically, they don't find anything. No charges are laid, or all charges are dropped because his detainment was unconstitutional. And Boyd's lawyer wanted him to sue, but he said, "No, I just want to pitch."
Okay. He's like, "I just want to get back to business here."
Yeah, and you'll see he probably should have sued those fucks because they hurt him, but he doesn't know it yet.
Son of a bitch.
So his velo is down, but he powered through and started the playoff clinching.
Velocity.
Yeah, velocity.
I know, some people don't know.
If you're not velo, if you're listening to a podcast called Sean and Ed's Do Baseball, you know what velo is. Yeah. Anyways, so he pitches the playoff berth clinching game against the Blue Jays, unfortunately, and the Red Sox went down 3-1 with Oil Can getting the loss in Game 3 of the ALCS. The Oil Can came back with a vengeance in a must-win Game 6. After giving up 2 runs in the first, Boyd would put up zeros on the scoreboard until the 7th, and Boston would force a Game 7, taking the game 10-4, and that would be Oil Can Boyd's only playoff win.
Okay.
So now everybody listening should probably kind of vaguely be familiar with the 1986 Mets vs. Red Sox World Series. We have a couple...
We have an episode on it.
Yeah, we have an episode on it. Not really about it, but...
it happened at it.
It happened at it. But, Eds, you'll probably know that you probably don't know that Oil Can Boyd was slated to start Game 7 for the Red Sox, but got bumped at the last minute. Boyd and the Red Sox got trounced by the Mets in Game 3 of the World Series 7-1, with Boyd giving up 2 runs before even getting an out at the start of the first inning. Mm-hmm. So he didn't have a great game. The series would go the distance, and if not for rain pushing back Game 7, Oil Can Boyd would probably have started for the Red Sox in Game 7, and who knows what happened. What would happen?
Yeah.
Who knows? But he claims, he's quite brash, and once again, he's like, "I would have, nobody beats me twice in a row, but
the coach would have put me in. We'd have won state for sure."
So McNamara, the Reds,
Uncle Rico of the '86 Red Sox.
Yeah, well, it's a really muddied story too, because McNamara's like, "No, we're going with the lefty," and Boyd's like, "No, I'm going to pitch in the row. You'll be the first man in." But McNamara, the Red Sox manager, insinuated that Boyd was drunk in a later interview, and that's why he didn't bring him in later in the game.
Okay.
So
he's insinuating that he's like, I was gonna make him the backup guy,
But then
he was
hammered.
mad, so he got hammered drunk.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, fuck.
Yeah.
Can't use him. Okay.
And Boyd claims this is BS, and they told him that they went with Bruce Hurst because Hurst was hot, and Boyd claims there's no way the Mets would have beaten him twice. They already said that, and there was no time for him to get drunk during the day on Game 7. He was like, where was I getting drunk? Like, anyways, he completely denies McNamara's assertion that he made. And he really likes McNamara. He's like, I don't know why he said that. Me and him get along great. I wasn't drunk. And McNamara, I think there was even an insinuation they had to like lock him in the manager's office because he was so out of control.
Oil Can?
Yeah. And Oil Can completely...
Maybe Oil Can doesn't remember.
Maybe.
He was blackout.
Yeah. Boyd claims, when Boyd received the news about not pitching, he began to cry. He then he headed out to score cocaine and stayed up all night smoking the cocaine. So this is...
So he's got an issue with dealing with adversity. Like Okay.
And even still, I do kind of, regardless of what McNamara said later, it was like, so the night before Game 7, you stayed up all night smoking cocaine because the coach told you wouldn't be pitching tomorrow. And then you were like, how dare he say I was, like, drunk during Game 7? It's like, well, you might not have been, but maybe you weren't in the best shape to pitch in a Game 7. Okay. Yeah. Anyways.
I wasn't drunk anymore.
I was just up all night smoking coke. Yeah. So Oil Can stayed out of trouble that offseason.
It wasn't the ecstasy, it was the egg rolls.
Yeah. Obviously, Boston loses.
Yeah.
Oil Can stays out of trouble that offseason and passed 16 drug tests while working out with his college coach and catcher. But his arm was bugging him still, even after all the rest. In 1987, it would be forgettable on the field. But that spring training, Boyd was embroiled in a very, very dumb incident involving unreturned videotapes. Boyd would be...
Oh, my God.
Boyd would be...
The reasons are just ridiculous all the time. So we knew a guy like this at one time.
We did.
You know?
So Boyd is detained...
God bless him.
God bless him. Boyd is detained by police due to an issue concerning overdue video cassette rentals, and when the list of titles is made public, it's turned out to contain a number of pornographic titles.
Wow.
And then the Boston police dubbed the incident the Cannes Film Festival.
That's a good one.
And Oil Can explodes at a reporter.
He's like, I don't get it.
Oh, cans!
I am the can.
It's the same reporter. Yeah. You cut. Never mind.
It's like whatever, Dennis.
So Oil Can continued using cocaine and had a hilarious incident in Oakland. Oil Can was paranoid that the team would search his locker that day, so he put his crack in the lining of his hat. But with the Boyd's motion on the hill and his big hair, his hat would occasionally fly off. Boyd looked down to pick up his hat after one pitch and saw the mound littered with crack cocaine.
Oh my God.
He picked up a few casually and put them in his pocket before walking around towing the dirt.
Chunky.
Nobody noticed the cocaine. Somebody has to have gone out and tried to find that game if it was on TV. Oh my God.
We'll check it out.
Yeah.
We'll
I don't even know which. He just vaguely refers to a game in Oakland, but I'm sure it can get narrowed down based on his short time in the big leagues.
Yeah.
Oil Can would only pitch 7 games, posting a 1-3 record in '87. And finally, he was allowed to have surgery on his shoulder in August, where doctors discovered a hairline fracture that was possibly from the police assault a year earlier from the cops pulling his arms back and up when they were arresting him.
Jesus Christ.
So it was tiny, so it was like...
So it may not have been noticeable to him?
Yeah, it was intermittent pain. Like some days it bothered him, some days it didn't.
Oh, okay. And I was going to say, how would you not know you were hurt? But that makes
also,
sense,
he pitched in the playoffs with a hairline fracture in his shoulder. Because it happened during the All-Star break the year earlier.
Yeah. Jesus.
Yeah, so he pitched that whole 86 Red Sox run. Oil Can Boyd was pitching with a broken fucking shoulder.
God.
Yeah.
On
So
his pitching arm?
yeah.
God damn.
So his shoulder's repaired, and he was able to start 23 games in 1988, posting a 9-7 record with a 5.34 ERA. So not that great. Boyd was the center of another controversy though that year, as the Yankees manager Billy Martin complained to umpires about the gold chains Boyd was wearing around his neck. The umpires ordered Boyd to remove the chains. After the game, Boyd called Martin both a bigot and a redneck. Unfortunately, Boyd developed... Oh, I jumped from that. So yeah, Martin's just like, yeah, it's kind of shitty. We see nowadays, I don't know. It just was a shit move to try to probably throw off the pitcher, but also kind of underhanded and kind of slimy and rednecky and bigoted from Martin. Either way, unfortunately, Oil Can Boyd developed blood clots in his pitching arm in August and wasn't able to pitch for the rest of the year. And the blood clots is just going to come back a little bit. It's like an oncurring thing. Once again, don't do drugs, kids.
Yeah.
Oil Can was just...
Brings me to my next point. Don't smoke crack.
Oil Can was just 28 and already going through some serious health issues. He would pitch in just 10 games for the Red Sox in 1989 before heading north of the border to get a fresh start with the Expos in 1990. But he took a few parting shots on his way out of town. He said to them...
Can't not say something mean.
Well, once again, his view on everything is viewed through race. And we can understand why based on his childhood, right? Mm-hmm. He said to the Boston Globe of the Red Sox manager, Joe Morgan, "I think Morgan believes black people have green tails and green blood. He felt blacks couldn't pitch. He felt they couldn't think out there on the mound."
Joe Morgan?
Yeah.
Isn't Joe Morgan a black man?
I don't know. I don't think so. But we'll look that up right now. I know there is a Joe Morgan.
That's the one I'm thinking of.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe he just... maybe he's saying that about a black man. That is totally reasonable. No, no, it was a white guy. It was a white guy. White guy. Never mind.
Not this Joe Morgan.
Not that Joe Morgan.
Okay.
This Joe Morgan.
Okay, yes. Yep. Different Joe Morgans. Yeah. Okay, makes sense.
In Montreal, Boyd had a season to remember. He started...
Thank you for going with us on that fact-checking journey, everyone.
He started 31 games, posting a 10-6 record and a 2.93 ERA over 190-plus innings.
Okay.
It's pretty darn good. Mm-hmm. Oil Can would say, "It was the best time I ever had playing baseball."
All right, so he's having fun too.
He's having fun up in Montreal. Who wouldn't? Montreal's the perfect place for Oil Can Boyd.
is a great city.
Yeah,
and you're right. It'd be a perfect place for Oil Can Boyd at this time.
And unfortunately, he gets traded.
Ah, for fuck's sake! To who?
The Rangers.
Oh, no. The worst team for him to get traded to, probably.
Yeah, and they're pushing for a playoff spot. And because he was so good with the Expos, they ship him off.
What year is this? 90?
91 now. Okay. He gets traded at the deadline in 91. He had a really good year in 90, has a decent start in 91, and then he gets shipped off to the Rangers at the trade deadline.
So he's down there 1-2 punching with Nolan Ryan now.
Yeah, and he's not punching because he's 2-7 with a 6.68 ERA and 12 starts with the Rangers.
Fuck this and fuck this team. I am throwing my games.
Yeah, fuck Nolan Ryan. Yeah. Fuck Arlington.
Yeah. Fuck the Expos.
Yeah, he's like, David Clyde, you're cool.
Yeah. Yeah, David Clyde. Deep cut.
In 1992, Boyd signed a minor league contract with the Pirates because he had such a shitty end of the year. But the recurring blood clots in his pitching arm, as well as being known as difficult, kept Oil Can off the field. But Boyd did not retire. The Oil Can never retires, Edsy.
Okay. So he's still not retired? Is that what you're telling me?
Oh, man, he probably pitched at some points, and he's still alive. So, yeah, he could be pitching in the spring, for all I know.
He's going to be in my softball league this summer somehow.
You got, yeah, I'm sure we can get that together if we reached out to the right people. But in 93, he goes and plays in the Mexican League for the Industriales of Monterrey, and he's a fucking closer instead of a starter now.
So he's like on a Kenny Powers trajectory now.
Yeah, so Boyd went to spring training with Cleveland in 1994, and Boyd quotes manager Mike Hargrove as saying to him, "If it was my choice and I was in control of this, you'd be in my rotation. You wouldn't just be on my pitching staff. You'd be in my 5-man rotation. But your personality is bigger than your right arm."
Okay.
So essentially, he claims...
So Hargrove is like, you're good, but you're a dickhead. So, like, your personality outweighs how good your arm is.
And I think he's saying... Well, I think he's saying he doesn't have a choice in the matter. Hargrove doesn't have a choice in the matter.
Right.
That the higher-ups are telling him that he can't take Oil Can.
Mm-hmm.
Because...
He's like, I would tolerate your personality.
Says, if it was my choice,
yes,
but... your right arm's or your personality's bigger than your right arm. So
I got you.
Instead,
so he's kind of more talking about the perception of you more than like how Hargrove feels about him per se.
Yeah, and as you've noticed, like he doesn't have a glowing reputation, and it kind of gets worse a little bit right here, just in my opinion, just because of some personal things. But so not here, but we'll get there in a paragraph. So in '94, instead, he doesn't play with Cleveland. He pitches for the Yucatan Leones of the Mexican League, and he'd finished the year with the Sioux City Explorers in the Independent Northern League. He was arrested for carrying a concealed weapon after an incident in a lounge in Sioux City in which a man reportedly was yelling racial slurs at him. And that's not what I'm upset about, just to be clear.
Okay, yeah.
I'm not upset about that. You can carry a gun and well, you can't threaten people with it if they call you racial slurs, but that's why you carry a gun.
Yeah.
Anyways, that's why I would...
I get what you're saying. Like,
my aside.
It's reasonable to be upset about a man yelling racial slurs at you.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. Yeah. Completely reasonable. And I'm sure the police did not understand or treat him well. So anyways, this is why I'm mad, because the Oil Can tried to make a comeback to the major leagues by scabbing. Spring 1995. This is from the Washington Post. The Major League Baseball Players Association strike is in its 7th month. The team owners have responded by opening spring training camps in Florida and Arizona with minor leaguers, and replacement players. And the owners, with the exception of the conscientious objector Peter Angelos of the Baltimore Orioles, plan to begin the regular season in April with replacements if the major leagues are still on strike. So, first of all, didn't know that about Peter Angelos and the Baltimore Orioles. Good for them. But Oil Can was...
They were like, no, this lockout is bullshit, or whatever?
We're not putting replacement players on the field.
Oh, I see. Okay.
The Orioles wouldn't do that, apparently.
So they weren't, like, that good.
Yeah. But Oil Can was one of the players who signed with the Chicago White Sox to be a replacement player if they were going to start the season with these replacement players instead of the major leaguers who are on strike. And he's scorned for it pretty heavily. When questioned, the 35-year-old Boyd responded with a clearly short-sighted but justified logic behind his signing with the White Sox. When it is over, I want to go to the big leagues, and I'll do whatever it takes to go to the big leagues. It's like, yeah, but if all your teammates hate you, and
what's the point? Yeah.
I mean, to him, he'd be like, I don't give a fuck.
He's like, that's my life normally.
Exactly. So he would say, nobody's going to dictate to me how I take care of my family, which is something I can genuinely be like, okay, if you thought this was your last shot to, make family taking care of money, sure.
Yeah.
But still, kind of short-sighted, and you're undermining your own union that you were a part of. Like, what the fuck? Anyways, Can believed he still had major league stuff, proclaiming, "Don't tell me I can't pitch anymore at 35 years old. If I can get my arm up in the air, I can get you out. I'll never be a thrower out there. I've always been a doctor."
Okay.
Weird thing to say, but the doctor would not get called Edsy because once Major League...
I've always been a doctor, and so was the owner of my team, which is a huge conflict of interest. So this is it for Oil Can Boyd's Major League career. He's done. No more tryouts or anything. Maybe there was one or two more that I missed. But he finishes his career with a 17.3 Baseball Reference WAR with a 4.04 career ERA
over 1,389 and 2/3 innings pitched. But, as I mentioned, oil can never rusts. 96. Boyd played for the Bangor Blue Oxes of the Northeast League and dominated with a 10-0 record for the season. In addition to
Bangor, Maine?
Yeah, Bangor, Maine. You got it.
All right.
In addition to earning league MVP honors for his pitching performance, Boyd also spent the season as the team's pitching coach. So he was kind of a pitching coach.
The MVP and the pitching coach?
Absolutely. So Boyd returned
That's pretty cool.
to the league for another year, but kind of retired after that to pursue something bigger.
Cocaine.
Cocaine. No, that's just, anyways. So he wants a team in his hometown of Meridian, Mississippi.
Okay.
From BostonHistory.com. In 1999, it appeared as if he would be successful when the Texas-Louisiana League announced plans to place an expansion franchise, the Queen City Bombers, in Meridian. But just like the near-miss opportunity to pitch in Game 7, Boyd's bid failed due to the lack of local sponsorship, personal funds, and overall support. But Boyd has not given up on his pursuit of ownership. He has since bought a plot of land, which has been cleared and graded in preparation for a new ballpark. So that, in the end, it doesn't work out, but Boyd is trying to get this done, and a year later in 2000 he's still selling the idea, trying to build up things. He told the South Coast Today, "I'm making history. I'm the only owner that plays. I'm planning to play until I'm as old as Satchel Paige. We own the land, we own the team, we own the stadium."
I love him.
I love him too.
I love it.
Unfortunately, that would never happen. He goes broke trying to develop this stadium, and he doesn't. I mean, probably cocaine helped with that too.
I was going to say, how much cocaine is he doing?
Never get into a development scheme with a cokehead.
Yeah.
At 45.
Yeah, I noticed you've never talked about recovery at any point yet, so I'm assuming.
He's unabashed about it.
Okay.
He's absolutely just like the
it
weed.
makes me real creative when it becomes real creative financially.
At 45, Boyd was not quite done. Oil can pitched for the Brockton Rocks in the Can-Am League in 2005. He finished the season with a 4-5 record and a 3.83 ERA in 17 games and made the All-Star team.
But they wouldn't let him start. Where's Brockton?
I have no idea. It's got to be somewhere in upstate New York or Vermont or something like that. If
it's not in Canada.
No, I don't think so. In November 2005, Boyd was indicted by a federal grand jury in Mississippi for allegedly making 5 phone calls in which he threatened a former girlfriend.
5 of them?
Yeah, well, it's kind of one of those things that I think, once again, it's a little bit of a overblown story, and I don't want to say threatening a former girlfriend is a minor thing. I think, obviously this is pretty serious, and there's domestic abuse can lead to horrible things. But what Boyd said on the matter is, "I threatened to beat her ass if she burned my stuff."
Oh my God. She burned my stuff.
Yeah, apparently Boyd was on the phone with her, and she was, threatening to get rid of his stuff and burn it or whatever, and he threatened her, and because it was over state lines, it was a federal crime instead of...
Even if it's on the phone?
Yeah, because it's interstate threatening. So once again, it's this is where I'm just oh my God, this is just such bullshit. It's just oh, it's a different crime if you're in the same city as somebody, but it's a federal crime if you're over state lines. So the FBI gets involved, not just the police. And
quickly, Brockton's in Massachusetts.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Boyd. So the FBI gets involved and arrests Boyd, and he ends up spending 120 days at the Fort Dix Federal Penitentiary.
Okay. I've heard of that place before. It's not a very good place.
No, I'm sure it wasn't a great stay. It wasn't no Marriott, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it wasn't the Radisson or anything.
Yeah. We can name hotels. Yeah. In 2000,
certainly wasn't the Four Seasons, Sean.
It's no Hojo.
Okay,
stop it.
Yeah,
so in 2012, along with writer Mike Shalin, Boyd published They Call Me Oil Can, Baseball, Drugs, and Life on the Edge. The release sent shockwaves through Major League Baseball, with most of the headlines focusing on Boyd's admitted drug use at pretty much all the stadiums around baseball. It's like it did cocaine.
It's like, I still have a stash at Fenway. If you go behind the scoreboard and look in the stack of sevens.
Yeah. I smoke crack in the bathroom at this park, and we used to do cocaine in this little back room at this park. It's just like that's what everybody focused on, but like the story of Oil Can Boyd, as I mentioned, in like all the racism he faced early on. And you know what, like to kind of like end this, and like that's the thing, is like he publishes this book that is very much it's a little rambling, it's a little ranty, but it's very much like pouring his heart out and being like, this is what I experienced as a black man. And you know, the drugs and the weed and the boot, whatever, he's pretty unapologetic for it, and all the power to him.
And it probably contributed to his prose, honestly.
Well, yeah, but it also, like, some of it is like, I didn't include a few things because he's like, I tried to kill and fight this team because they were calling me stuff. And then his, like, college coach was like, yeah, no, he just yelled at them. And he like, literally, that story is like a Ricky Bobby story where he's like, I just started taking my clothes off. I threw my cleats in their dugout, and I was just hot, so I just needed to be like, and his coach is like, no, he just yelled at them a bit.
Yeah.
So... Yeah,
so
take it with a grain of salt.
You're saying there may be some exaggeration to some.
Yeah, well, that's why I didn't use his book as a huge primary source for this one. It was very nice getting some of the personal stories and the personal because it really doesn't include. It's just like he was just sent down to AAA because he got into a fight with his coach, and he's just like, in the book, he's like, yeah, he said something I took as racist, and you're like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Whereas you don't get that context in the media, and then of course when he publishes the book, all the media talks about is like, oh, he smoked crack in the bathroom. Like, it's like, what the like, cool.
Yeah.
But his book starts out with talking about those two white workers and James Chaney coming to his house, and that's one of his first memories of America is like meeting these people that were immediately murdered right afterwards by the KKK.
Yeah, and as like a young man, like that, I'm sure would create a situation in your mind where you're like, I cannot trust anyone ever.
Well, and so I kind of
and frankly, like in that environment in the 60s, I mean, not that like I was there or knew what it was like at all, but like, you know, based on what I've read and seen and like, you know, Mississippi Burning watching last night was like, you know, that would be very intense. You would have anxiety all the fucking time.
All the time. And once again, you know, what happened to his brother, what happened to him on the mound, what happened to like just people he met.
Yeah, I forgot about his brother already. Well, like his brother just getting like blacklisted because racism.
Yeah. And so this, I kind of subbed it up. Let's just say I just like Oil Can, I got a little creative and painted a little paintbrush here. But I think Oil Can's story is probably one of like the best examples I've heard of institutionalized racism, where he grew up in segregation on the cusp of change. And even though that change happened, the sentiments and the attitude for a lot of people, it took a long time to change. And as you said, it still reverberated throughout his whole career. His big brother's career was a casualty of that ideology, even though it was, 10 years later after these murders. And though less overt than Mississippi in the 1960s, a lot of these ideas still resonated through MLB owners, managers, and the media that covered these teams. So, beyond all odds, Oil Can Boyd still made it and carved out a heck of a career. Someone like me may take a glance at the headlines of Dennis Boyd's career and naively say, what was he so mad about? Or why was he so self-destructive and divisive? But, like, the angry black man is a stereotype in our culture, in our society.
Yeah.
But after reading about Oil Can Boyd, I think he's justified in his anger.
And like no one really it feels anyway like no one acknowledged that.
Yeah.
And he always maybe like some people might look at the stories he tells and be like, well, he's like looking for a reason to be mad.
Yeah.
Right. But like, I don't know if I really consider it like a reason to be mad. He's like, I feel like he's looking for that, like, he's that acknowledgement of like the anger that is justified,
Well, and the anxiety, always being on edge, always questioning, was that a slight at my race? Was that a slight at me as a man? And you're like, well, where did that come from? It's like, well, it came from a childhood a whole childhood of
mistrust and of
society.
abuse, of societal abuse, essentially.
Yeah, he
right?
doesn't. He talks in his book. He's like, I don't trust cops. Like, I don't trust cops because the cops killed those guys that came to my town. He's like, he's like, that resonates with me. And
yeah,
and I'll finish it up. We talked about it. He saw the very worst of human nature from a young age, and it carries through to him still to this day. In his book, he writes, I can't let go of how I really truly feel about life. These situations, especially the situation of James Chaney, Andrew Goodman, and Michael Schwerner being killed with no mercy, they make you who you are. And times haven't changed as much as people think. James Chaney is buried in Meridian, and every year someone takes a sledgehammer to his tombstone.
Oh my God. Is that, I mean, you wouldn't write that if that wasn't true. That's fucking awful.
And that's his lens on life. He's like, that made me who I was. Like, no matter what. I just see the hatred.
Well, I mean, you can argue one way or the other about it, but like to Dennis Boyd, like that's reality.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether like, someone else wants to accept that or not and argue against his justification or not. But like to him, that's the only thing that exists. That is his life.
Yeah.
Fuck, man. Like that's crazy.
Well, that's Oil Can Boyd.
That's amazing. Like that's a wild story and well done on like sort of
Mississippi burning you.
yeah, well done in deceiving me and sort of like I mean, not deceiving me entirely, but like you made me look for the story in a different place and you brought it back into that, so it worked out all together. But yeah, man, like that. Good on you for like sort of I hadn't really considered it from like that angle of like why like someone might feel that way, because as you say, like you spend your whole life in like an anxious state of mind because you've never been given
the
like
ability
a feeling
to be comfortable,
a feeling of safety, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of talk these like days in like politics or whatever you want to say about like a safe space and how we shouldn't everyone needs a safe space and blah blah blah, this and that, but like you do.
Yeah.
You really fucking do, in order to like, create that like mental stability in your life and to like have trust.
Especially
you need
children.
safe space as a child, you know?
And like, I just can't imagine, like, I say that if you haven't seen Mississippi Burning, if you don't know about the James Chaney and the whatever, this voting rights murders down in Mississippi. It's a wild story. I ended up going into that quite a bit. But I mean, to finish this off, I'd say, what, I kind of have a kind of, not on a personal level, but just on a kind of like attitude, media perception, and also kind of weirdly in statistics. Who like the modern day, like kind of Oil Can Boyd to me is?
Marcus Stroman.
Absolutely, you're on the same page. And Dennis Oil Can Boyd finished his career with a 78 and 77 record, and Marcus Stroman, before the 2024 season starts, currently has a 77 and 76 record, and their ERAs are not that much far apart. So they're very similar, both in talent as well as, I think Stroman will surpass Well, can
Maybe non-cocaine use, but
maybe.
Who knows?
Who knows? Marcus, if you want to let us know about that, you can find us on Twitter at Doing Baseball.
and on Instagram at doing.baseball, and what's the other one?
Oh, I don't.
TikTok at doing.baseball. That's a segue.
That was a segue. No, thanks for tuning in. I'm at Sean Do Baseball on Twitter.
And I'm at Ed's Do Baseball on Twitter.
And until next time, thanks so much for listening. Give us a follow, give us a rating, give us a review. And I'm Sean.
And I'm Ed's.
And we were bringing you the baseball.
Okay, bye.